I encountered Lena, my wife of nearly 15 years, during high school. The subsequent Monday, after hosting a party at my parents' farm for my friends, I requested a family friend working for us to procure a couple of bottles of sour mashed potato. My cousin Terry, not accustomed to being drunk for long at his age, decided to head home instead of recovering. Although I successfully retrieved the truck keys from him, he believed he outsmarted me. This idiot emerged from the front door, thinking he could walk the 5 miles to his house, and I allowed it. Reportedly, a young woman discovered him about a mile away, crawling through gutters while fetching the family mail, as he couldn't stand on his feet anymore. That's how I messed up before he left my parents' house. After involving her principled father, she transported my cousin to his parents' house. My aunt, my father's sister, had to deal with his multiple bouts of vomiting due to his foolishness. My parents learned about it, and I faced repercussions. In their view, I had betrayed their trust and was a horse's back. Regardless of my explanations, they believed the worst. Eventually, my aunt exaggerated the incident, portraying it as the worst thing humanity could do. I was in a tough spot. If only she knew the truth about her son's behavior. Nothing can be done when a person is blinded by faith and can't see reality. I accepted it and served my time. I realized early on that the truth doesn't matter most of the time. What matters is what people believe. From then on, I altered my attitude toward everyone I knew. My father used to say that I had aged prematurely because my walk changed. One day, an unfamiliar young woman approached me in the hallway before class after lunch. She expressed concern about wild parties at my parents' farm, alleging the presence of half-undressed girls and questioning my responsibility. I responded by asking her identity and the reason for her accusations. Lena LeBlanc introduced herself and mentioned finding a man from my parties in a ditch near her parents' house. I considered how far from the truth her perception was, but refrained from correcting her, mindful of the potential impact on my reputation in our small town of Jackson. I assured her that the situation wasn't as bad as she thought, avoiding any correction to her misconceptions. Instead, I invited her to join the next Saturday night party. Lena blushed, insisting she wasn't that kind of girl. I playfully remarked that maybe she wasn't, but she seemed interested. I continued to observe her body language, suggesting that her actions contradicted her words. She called me a horse's back, and I replied that it was true, but horses' asses were meant to be ridden hard. I quipped that she should let me know when she's up for it. She slapped me and stormed off, but I caught a glimpse of a smile before she slapped me. I chuckled, realizing my reputation for the year was already established. My cousin Terry, who witnessed the entire incident, mentioned that her words had made me one of the most popular in the educational institution that year. I responded that she had no idea about anything. Terry asked what I said to her, and I brushed it off, not bothering to explain. After smoking a joint each, I laughed because Terry was unaware that I had put the deck on the line. With that said, we headed to our first class, initiating a game between me and Lena. I played with Lena every opportunity I got, extracting everything I could from her. Whenever I saw her in public, I made it clear to anyone watching that I was undressing her with my eyes. This behavior became so noticeable that one of her friends would play the song Hungry Eyes on her cell phone when she spotted me, a way for me to get revenge for Lena LeBlanc punching me in the face. Yeah, I was being an idiot, but I enjoyed it. Additionally, she had an irresistible body. I was just a fool, honest enough to admit it. If one of her friends asked me what I was doing, I would honestly say, I'm interested in her. However, Lena declared we'd have a relationship when hell freezes over, and until then, I should respect her wishes. This only fueled Lena's frustration, as her friends wanted to know what I had done to provoke such a reaction. When she explained it to them, they either laughed at the situation or teased her about her response. Lena LeBlanc was attractive in my eyes, a red-haired Cajun from the deep south with a body that haunted my dreams. Standing at about 5 feet 6 inches, she was tight, sweet, with curves in all the right places. If she got upset outside of educational institution, she could unleash a stream of swear words in Cajun French at a mile a minute. Okay, I'll admit it. I enjoyed seeing her get upset. When her friends informed her about my actions, the smile on my face, seeing her blush over comments about our situations, revealed that I was enjoying it. I added to that when she wore a low-cut blouse displaying her cleavage, releasing a long, hungry wolf cry that echoed through the hallways. Everyone noticed Lena had put on something that made her look really good, and for the rest of the day, every guy clamored to check her out. I don't know if she enjoyed the attention, but I found it amusing. Numerous times I caught myself gazing at her enticing little horseshoe-shaped rear with a beautiful 36S rack, a narrow waist, and 34 hips. There wasn't a single coital act I didn't imagine doing with her. At times I fantasized about taking her into the hayloft in my parents' barn, although I never hoped it would lead anywhere because her family was affluent, and mine was not. She possessed the spirit of a wild horse yet to be tamed, if that was possible. Depending on her mood, she could be passive-aggressive or dominant. A man attempting to win her over would need the patience of Job, as it would take a long time to understand her before devising a plan to get into her clothes. The more I studied her, the more I realized how complex her personality was. That's how much her hot body and personality turned me on. If any woman could give me a blue balls attack, it was her. There were moments when she would catch my eye when no one else noticed, doing something to tease me. We both played this game intentionally to frustrate each other. It took almost the entire educational institution year before we both realized how effective it was. Everyone knew I was an buttocks lover, and nothing in my eyes was better than what Lena wore on her frame. Once, catching me ogling 3 of her friends, she leaned over and wiggled their asses while laughing. Apparently, her mother had told her that men attracted to asses turned out to be the most faithful husbands, a belief that spread through the entire educational institution after she shared it with Flat Karen. We were both set to graduate 12th grade with honors. She became valedictorian, and I secured the second spot. She believed that if my extracurricular activities were known, I wouldn't be considered at all. Rehearsing for our graduation ceremony roles on the auditorium stage a month away, I was to be there in case she fell ill. I knew she'd come regardless, even out of spite. There was no way she'd let me win by default. Both recipients of substantial educational grants, our last high educational institution dance was that upcoming Saturday. In the fall, I planned to attend Southeast Missouri University to pursue a master's degree in agricultural science. Leaving the stage through back stairs leading down the hallway, I ran my hand over her soft rear end, whispering, "When will you be ready to let me knock on it?" Turning around, she slapped me, saying, "When hell freezes over, fool." When there was nothing to lose and no witnesses, I became a bit aggressive. Frustrated, I pulled her close and, lowering my head, looked into her eyes. Initially resistant, I persevered with unwavering determination, recognizing it as my sole opportunity to make a move. Her eyes widened as I brought my mouth close, initiating a forceful, deep French kiss with intensity, claiming her mouth as my own. Injecting the kiss with passion and desire, I decided that if I was paying the price, I deserved to extract every ounce of satisfaction. It was to be my first and perhaps only kiss with her, and I aimed to make it unforgettable. After savoring the taste I longed for, I released her to gauge her reaction. Expecting a passionate or frustrated response, I was surprised when she forcefully pinned me against the wall, matching my aggression and turning the situation thrilling. Another deep, lingering kiss followed, revealing her assertive side. Our bodies melded together as she grabbed my lap, showcasing her assertiveness, and the recognition of size added intensity to the charged atmosphere. Lena expressed that she had been waiting for this for most of the educational institution year, mentioning that she was glad I finally decided to be a man. She wished I had told her that months ago and requested that I loosen my grip. I responded, stating that I wouldn't until she agreed to exclusivity. She firmly replied, "Deal. You've been the only one I've looked at since you slapped me." I smiled and brought my mouth to hers again. This time, I revealed my tender side, kissing her softly and deliberately. My hands firmly rested on the softness of her cheeks, feeling like I held a piece of heaven. Our kisses were both demanding and open, with Lena exploring my figure. Leaving the landing a few minutes later, thinking we heard a noise, we held hands, realizing our relationship had taken a big step forward outside educational institution. The heightened mutual attraction during the educational institution year intensified our feelings. Those who saw us leave immediately noticed the smiles on our faces, sparking discussions in the corridors for the rest of the day. It was amusing because neither of us had dated that year, seemingly waiting for each other. I waited for her at the educational institution entrance, and without saying a word, she handed me the educational institution book she was talking to at home. Lena suggested stopping at the Dairy Queen for a milkshake before I dropped her off at home. Karen was shocked, exclaiming if Lena and I were finally admitting our interest in each other. Lena assured her that she would call later that night to explain everything. We walked out of the house holding hands, heading for my Jeep Cherokee Sport. At the Dairy Queen, she wanted a Blizzard, and I wanted a regular shake, so I ordered both in the largest size. In the city park, at one of the picnic tables, we started getting to know each other. Around 6 in the evening, I dropped her off at her parents' house. Her mother opened the door for her, and her father, shocked by my respectful approach, eventually gave his consent for me to take his daughter to the dance on Saturday night. He appreciated the respect, considering it a testament to my upbringing. Years later, when I asked for his daughter's hand in marriage, he didn't object, as long as I followed his plans to protect his assets. After Lena went into her parents' house, I headed to my parents' farm. My parents sensed a change in my life, and when questioned, I mentioned an interesting conversation. Privately, my dad asked about the redhead I invited to the educational institution dance on Saturday night. From that day on, Lena and I were inseparable. It was Saturday, the day my parents went into town. I was in the hayloft, preparing to haul a few bales of straw after cleaning out 4 stalls with the loader on the front of the tractor. I did this once a month, usually on the first Saturday of the month. The horses were in the paddock in the pasture. I carried everything to the edge of the loft and was just getting ready to spread them out on the floor of the stalls when I heard Lena's voice calling me. "I'm here," I said. "I have 14 more bales to drop before I go down." I started throwing them over the side as fast as I could and was about ready to climb down when I saw Lena's head sticking out above the floor. I went over to greet her as she finished her climb. It was funny how much flat space was open in the straw bales. A moment later, we were lying with our arms around each other on bales of straw. Our mouths were closed, and our hands were exploring each other's bodies. She, like me, was eager to get up from where we stood on the stairs. It wasn't long before she was pulling off my shirt, and I had just finished undoing the buttons of her blouse, anticipating how I would feel her beautiful chest when we were interrupted. Lena and I probably would have gotten carried away if we hadn't heard my parents honking. I noticed my parents trying to grab my attention. As we descended the stairs, they were already approaching the barn. Lena and I swiftly spread out the straw in the stalls. In one of the stalls, Mom and Dad caught us throwing straw at each other, and laughter ensued. Curiosity led my parents to the barn, prompted by the sight of a strange car in the yard when I wasn't around. They were pleasantly surprised to find a pretty girl about my age visiting the farm. It was intriguing to observe the surprise on my parents' faces when I introduced Lena to them as my girlfriend. I informed them that as soon as I finished bedding the floor, I would saddle the horses and take her for a ride. Mom suggested having lunch first, and Lena volunteered to help. They headed toward the house, prompting my father to commend my quick thinking and advise me not to jeopardize this new relationship. "Lena is better company, just like your mother was at the same age," he said. "Make sure she's good enough to be the mother of your children if you're considering it." My father, a practical man, offered straightforward thoughts, emphasizing the consequences of our actions. I learned then that he always had a fondness for redheads. Dad assisted me in setting up the 4 horse stalls before returning to the house. By the time we got back, Mom and Lena had already become friends. After lunch, we went for a horseback ride, reaching the back 50 after tying the horses to a low branch. Finding new spots on the grass by the swimming pond, we leaned against a tree. Around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Lena left to get ready for the educational institution dance. While dancing that night, Terry overheard Lena telling Karen that my sweet and gentle personality attracted her. Despite our teasing, we never took it further. Lena explained to Karen and Terry that she appreciates my ability to control my temper. "Jet can be aggressive when needed," she said. "His passive nature guides him in everything, but when he sets his mind to something, no one can make him back down. Waiting for me like I was the only one proved that," she added. "Terry attested to my loyalty, saying he'd do anything for me, just as I would for him. Piss him off, and you'll realize you underestimated him. More than one boy here crossed him, and after he dealt with them, They were lying on the ground in blood. When I picked her up for the last dance of the educational institution year, her parents were surprised when I brought her a corsage without a special occasion. They said it was the most beautiful bouquet they had ever seen. I explained that I made it from plants in a small nursery my father and I had started on the farm. I made it in neutral colors, so it goes with anything, I said. They seemed very impressed. She looked stunning in that white summer dress, emphasizing her curves. All night I thought about her. There was no doubt in everyone's mind that we were now a couple. Yeah, she was a real tease to me, and she knew it. I think she was irritating me that night, kind of paying me back for what we'd done to each other during the educational institution year. Toward the end of the summer, we spent a lot of time in the hayloft. Mom and I had a long conversation after she found my stash of contraceptives hidden in a far drawer. It was then that she decided to have a conversation with the woman she hoped would be her future daughter-in-law. I must have realized what was said, because shortly afterward, Lena informed me that she was taking birth control pills. One night at dinner, Mom put in her 2 cents, saying, "The horses seem to like the stalls better, and they've gotten much sharper in the pasture. I wonder if it might be because the straw has taken on a new odor." I almost choked on my food and started coughing, and my dad looked up and said I missed something. My father recognized my early interest in gardening and fostered its growth. Under his guidance, we transformed 20 acres of our 250-acre farm into a Christmas tree farm, acquiring small trees inexpensively through a reforestation grant. After identifying the best tree type for the Christmas market, every spring break, my father and I spent a week planting rows of new seedlings, creating a special bonding time for us. About 2 weeks before planting, we tilled the plot, repeating this process 3 or 4 times, depending on the weather, before leveling it. This facilitated quick and easy planting, allowing us to promote our first crop well before sale the following season. With approximately 400 trees standing at 80 feet tall, the remaining task was pruning them to perfection for retail buyers. We even devised a labeling system for buyers to know the farm of origin. In 6th grade, my father, acknowledging my passion for growing plants, emphasized the need to replenish topsoil. An arrangement with the city of Jackson involved bringing collected yard waste to a designated site for mass topsoil production. Cape Girardeau adopted a similar practice, and from an early age, at least twice a month, I spent a day or two creating mulch by chopping up twigs, filtering out non-biodegradable items burned in oil drums. The ashes were scattered along the plot boundary for a cleaner end product. Once the pile reached a certain size, we added chemicals to stimulate the rotting process and maintain moisture. Turning the heap over once or twice a month ensured proper aeration. Local building contractors learned they could dump excess soil without a removal fee. Mostly Missouri red clay, we mixed this soil with our biodegradable mulch, leading this side of our growing business to claim quite a few acres. After topsoil removal, some of the donated soil was used to level and grade the land for our greenhouses. It took 18 months to transform useless dirt into high-quality topsoil, used for bedding in our greenhouses and sold to the retail market in 10-pound bags. In the first 3 years, enough profit was made to build 2 large glass greenhouses, heated in winter with gas furnaces, filled with growing flowers shipped to local wholesalers as needed. Implementing a system of PCP tubing and an expanding hose, we designed an automatic watering system hanging from the top down, applying the same principles to water our crops. A drainage system built by my father on the concrete floor collected excess water for reuse. This efficient approach saved on costs and eliminated the need for a pond to collect excess fertilizer from watering. During the summer, we constructed an additional 4 greenhouses to cultivate white and red poinsettias for Christmas, eventually reaching a total of 10. Recognizing the money earned through our collaborative efforts, my father decided I could graduate without incurring debt. I vividly recall Lena's initial exposure to our operation, which aided her comprehension of why I selected this career path. My father conveyed that my inquisitive nature played a pivotal role in bringing this business to fruition. He noted that I was asking questions, prompting family discussions. Following conversations with my wife and securing her approval, the family embarked on this venture, now a significant and steadily growing source of income. Inquiring about the farm's previous use, Lena asked. My father explained it formerly raised beef, influenced by market fluctuations. By my graduation, we boasted 22 greenhouses, each 240 feet long, 40 feet wide, and 9 feet high. Weekly, we delivered high-quality organic produce. Responding to increased demand, we expanded further, with 2 greenhouses dedicated to leaf lettuce, 2 to bok choy, and 2 to English cucumbers. Employing 20 individuals, our chemical-free organic produce commanded higher prices from wholesalers, ensuring our financial prosperity. As anticipated, I joined the family business full-time, while Lena pursued a career as a family nurse practitioner associated with Southeast Missouri Hospital. I proposed to her within a week of her receiving her license, and 3 months later, we hastily married due to her pregnancy with our daughter. Our 2 sons arrived a year apart from our wedding day. Spoiled by my parents, Lena was cherished, with my mother becoming our children's nanny, giving her a renewed sense of purpose. To this day, our children reflect the morals and values she instilled in them. Celebrating our 14th anniversary, my cousin Terry and his wife Karen expressed concerns about our relationship, suggesting Lena appeared to dominate and control me. At a family barbecue, they confronted me, asserting that Lena treated me as a second-class citizen, displaying a motherly fatigue in the relationship. Despite my attempts to defend Lena, they insisted that I had stopped listening to her, causing resentment. According to Terry, Lena was leveraging my softer personality to assert dominance, and some friends suspected she harbored a romantic interest outside our marriage. Reflecting on these comments, I confronted Lena about her treatment, expressing fatigue from being treated like a doormat. This revelation shocked her, making her feel out of place for the first time in a while. Luna, my 13-year-old daughter, questioned my father, asking him what had gotten into him. I responded loudly for everyone to hear, stating that I had reached a point where I could no longer tolerate the feeling that her mother was treating me like a servant. I warned that if her mother didn't change her attitude, our house would be turbulent for months. This statement served as an awakening for everyone present. I realized that, for most of our married life, I had turned a blind eye because it wasn't worth fighting over. I allowed my wife to walk over me like a doormat, without resistance. That night, Lena and I had a significant argument, something that had been brewing for a long time. I ended up sleeping on the couch. Towards the end of our argument, Lena remarked that I just didn't know how extra I was. That's when I lost control. We were fighting outside, away from the kids' hearing. Driven by anger, I grabbed Lena, turned her over my knee, and spanked her, a method I had used with our children for misbehavior. She went into the bedroom in tears, with a very red bottom, locking the door to prevent my entry. To say that Lena was tiptoeing around me the next morning is an understatement. Lena had just been confronted with a new reality. When my wife and kids left home the next morning, I returned from the large office near the greenhouses to investigate. As I lay on the couch, contemplating when the change in our marriage began, it struck me that it was 8 years ago, a couple of months after my mother's pass away. After conducting a thorough search of her bedroom, I found a wrist bracelet with custom-made 18-karat gold charms. The issue was, I hadn't bought them for her. The charms were so sensual that she could never wear them in public. I knew they must have been custom-made to order by her lover due to their significant expense. I quietly pocketed it to take with me, wanting it to be acknowledged. This discovery lent credence to Karen and Terry's suspicions. Returning to my office, I kept quiet when questioned about it. I mentioned that I had a lot on my mind, which was true. Around 3 p.m, with an office staff member present, I asked her to call the group my wife was in to inquire if they were accepting new clients. Fiona inquired for personal reasons, asking why I wanted to know. I explained that I needed to check my wife's actual work schedule, as some rumors had come to my attention that I needed to prove were not true. Fiona commented as she walked out the door that finally, someone had the courage to tell me what they had been hearing for months. Fiona, Karen's sister and a military widow, had joined our company while her husband was in the service. She was now raising her daughter alone. I often wondered why she couldn't find another man. Fiona was the complete opposite of her sister and beautiful. In all the years of our marriage, my wife was the only woman who had caught my attention. However, after seeing what Fiona had to offer in terms of femininity, I realized I was still young enough to start over. The freedom of knowing I had another choice brought peace to my state of mind. Although I had known her for years, thanks to Terry and Karen, I hadn't paid much attention to her. For some reason, I experienced the excitement of the unknown again, an amazing feeling. When she returned, the information she provided was quite revealing. Her work schedule was not at all what I had envisioned. Instead of working Thursdays and Fridays until 10 p.m. every week, she only did it once a month. Like all the other doctors in their office, Fiona and I chatted for quite a few minutes. She attempted to pose questions subtly, avoiding clarity in her inquiries. Whether she was aware of it or not, she instilled a few thoughts in my mind that fostered hope for my future. This afforded her a significant amount of unaccounted-for time. It was surprising to discover that she only worked half a day on Wednesdays. Now the question arose, what was she doing with all that free time? 8 years ago, when a tragic accident befell my mother, my father and I were startled to learn that she had bequeathed her shares in the family business to me, entrusting them to her 3 grandchildren. During my childhood, they had sold most of the farm at an inflated price to a corporation, retaining 10 acres around the house in their name and another 10 in mine. The corporation paid off the mortgage for 10 years with interest. They gifted me the land as a wedding present from Lena and me, and on that land, Lena and I constructed our house. My father took his wife's loss hard and withdrew from society for a few months afterward. During that period, I assumed the role of the company's president, and my father retired as our first CEO, though he still came in 3 mornings a week to stay updated and serve as an advisor. I was aware of an impending significant business trip in a couple of weeks, during which I would have to visit 8 different company offices to renew multi-year contracts requiring my signature. These contracts included product line extensions, providing opportunities to increase revenue. As it involved 3 countries, I had to be away for at least 3 weeks. My father and I continued to lead our company, now employing over 100 people, with more than 48 greenhouses operating at maximum capacity. Fortunately, in my first year of full-time employment, I conducted a survey to identify potential underground water veins and found one that would sustain us for years. By discontinuing the county water supply, we reduced our total expenses by $10,000 per month. Additionally, we uncovered a vast natural gas cavity. Since the land had been in the family for generations, we still owned the mineral rights. Through negotiations with major companies, we secured a mutually beneficial arrangement. Even after covering our heating costs, we received a substantial monthly royalty. My cousin Terry, serving as our CFO, visited my office to brief me on the latest cash flow statement, revealing that we were on track for the most significant year of growth in the company's history. During this private meeting, I disclosed my discovery to him. Examining the report, he was as astounded as I was. Terry inquired about my plans, asking what I intended to do. I replied that I wouldn't send someone else to sign the contracts. Instead, I planned to pretend I had no idea what was going on. I explained that this would give the private investigators I was going to hire plenty of time to find out who my wife's lover is. Terry questioned the relevance of finding out in a 50 state like ours, suggesting it wouldn't matter in divorce court. I remarked that Lena's father, Leonard LeBlanc, was and still is a conniving person. Before Lena and I were married, he made us sign a prenuptial agreement, and I guessed Lena forgot about it. Terry asked why he did it, wondering if Leonard LeBlanc was worth millions, thanks to fracking, to protect his daughter from me ever getting a piece of her inheritance. I responded, stating that if we divorce because of infidelity, the guilty party walks away with the clothes, and that's the end of it. Upon arriving home that evening, my demeanor had notably shifted. My wife appeared to show a respect for me that had been absent for years. It seemed evident to both of us that our relationship had undergone a significant change. Lena was undoubtedly attempting to discern what I might be aware of. An interesting note was that same morning, my father had opted for a 2-week fishing trip with childhood friends, a plan they had encouraged for years. He'd be away until my return. Throughout his absence, Lena had been home more frequently, sparking suspicions that something undisclosed was occurring in his life. A few days later, my daughter informed me that her mother was frantically searching for something and questioning all 3 children about it. "Daddy, Mom accused us of going into your bedroom and going through her dresser drawers," Luna said, noting the emotional weight attached to what her mother sought. Upon my return home, I inquired about it, but Lena downplayed its significance. When I mentioned our daughter's concern, Lena suggested that Luna might have misunderstood, planning to clarify after dinner. That night during dinner, I regarded Lena similarly to how I had during our school days, prompting a significant change in her mood. I presumed Lena now believed I was aware of her affair. Post-dinner, as she put the boys to bed, my daughter questioned me about the situation. "Luna, I'm not sure," I said. "People have informed me of something, and if it's true, things are going to get a lot worse around here for a while, because it's going to take your parents a while to sort it out. Just remember that this situation didn't arise because of your behavior or your brother's behavior. It's been 3 weeks since I discovered the bracelet with all the charms on it. The 16 charms were valued at $8,000 each. The platinum used in the bracelet, along with the gold, put the chain at $20,000. Whoever gave her this piece of jewelry, it was made by one of the most famous jewelers in the jewelry business. Since all the charms were unique, they were bought to commemorate special moments or events in these two's relationship. If you figure that she received 2 charms a year, perhaps for her birthday and anniversary, that works out to about 8 years. Reluctant to accept it, the circumstantial evidence pointed toward a direction I refused to consider. That's why I adjusted my schedule to acquire what I needed. I booked a hotel room in St. Louis to receive a full report from private investigators before proceeding with my business. There, my fears were confirmed. My wife's lover, for almost 8 years, was a man I had known all my life. The private investigators handed me a written copy and a flash drive with the recorded evidence. After the gentleman departed with full payment, I perused the comprehensive report, finding it so detailed that I wondered how I didn't become physically ill. Fortunately, on my way back from Canada, I purchased a couple of bottles of scotch at the duty-free store and consumed more than a couple of strong shots while reviewing the report. Summoning my courage, I contacted my former father, Leonard LeBlanc, and requested his personal email account. Leonard, a proud man with his values, faced the personal distress caused by this report. Yet I knew that if I didn't disclose the truth, he would assist Leonard in undermining me during our divorce. I explained to Leonard that I wanted him to know what's in store for him because he wouldn't believe it if he heard it from me. I mentioned that the dossier was handed to me about 2 hours ago and cost me $6,000 to get. When I received the letter, I sent it to him via my laptop and awaited the imminent phone call. Leonard LeBlanc might have appeared to be the epitome of Homer Pyle upon initial acquaintance. Standing over 6'50" tall, he exhibited the same clumsiness and awkwardness as everyone else. In his childhood, he was the son of a fortunate alligator hunter who amassed wealth. Despite his unassuming demeanor and simple language, he conveyed the impression of a dull-witted person. Many were deceived, underestimating the genius he concealed from most. When intrigued, he delved into thorough research, starting from the ground level. CEOs were often astonished to discover, after sealing a challenging deal, that he had only been with their company for 6 months. While leading the corporation, he possessed the knowledge to enhance their profitability and productivity by exploiting their vulnerabilities, potentially saving millions from their initial costs. As soon as my cell phone rang, I answered, anticipating it to be my father-in-law. Leonard exclaimed, expressing his surprise at the situation, admitting that if I had told him, he would have called. He characterized me as the biggest liar in the country and questioned how much worse things were going to get from there. I asserted that I planned to do the same thing to them as he did, stating there would be no mercy for either of them. Leonard replied, expressing understanding and absolving me of blame, stating that he'd burn anyone for what they've done. He requested that I promise not to do anything before we talk, and assured me that our words wouldn't be recorded. Leonard LeBlanc, a religious man with his own views on life and morality, garnered respect for steadfastly maintaining his principles. I suggested to my dad that we go fishing with the boys the first Sunday after I get home, and that he could call my daughter to arrange it tonight if she'll be home. He liked the idea, seeing it as an opportunity to eliminate 2 birds with 1 stone. He wanted to know what made me suspicious. I explained that I found a bracelet with a bunch of charms on it, had it appraised, and discovered it was custom-made. Last Monday, while in Montreal, I arranged to have it shipped to my wife from Paris. It would be sent by courier 1 piece at a time to arrive at her workplace with a note. I planned to contact my father-in-law and his lover at the appropriate time, so they could find out the cost of my silence. All 16 pieces must be in her possession before I return home. Leonard expressed concern, anticipating that my wife and her lover would turn into lunatics. I replied, explaining that it would give me time to find a buyer for my shares in the corporation. Selling my father's dream was the only thing that could hurt him as much as it hurt me, throwing them off balance psychologically for the near future. Leonard understood the plan, and I continued, stating that their fears would become more apparent as the date of my return approached. Leonard inquired about the remaining duration of my trip, and I replied that I had 2 more weeks to live out of a suitcase. From the day the first courier letter hit my wife's eyes, they would be the walking dead. I remarked that it would have been easier if they were actually dead, suggesting a less complicated resolution. After he hung up the phone, I relaxed, knowing Leonard LeBlanc wouldn't wait for anyone. Hailing from the swamps, he knew how to resolve a matter without unnecessary questions. In the heart of New York City, staying at the Trump Hotel, I received the detective's unwelcome news while still at my desk well after 9 p.m. My father was dead, and I was shocked. I had to inquire about the details of what had happened. Evidently, my wife and he chose to take a swim in the rear section of the pond where Lena and I had spent considerable time. On the initial Wednesday afternoon we started dating, when the kids were at school, they opted for a horseback ride to cool off. Dad got there before Lena due to the hot weather. Local authorities suspected that someone had introduced a pet alligator a couple of years ago, which had adapted to its new habitat. Divers found my father's body after they eliminated the alligator. All 3 of us grasped the circumstances. Lena, my wife, was physically undamaged, but grappling with significant emotional distress. Our children stayed with their grandparents until my wife regained control of the situation. Returning to my table, I shared the recent revelation with those still present, then excused myself to attend to personal matters. While walking back to my room, I pondered the consequences of being on Leonard LeBlanc's bad side. I wondered about his plans for his daughter. After a stiff drink, I placed a call, and Leonard promptly answered. I began by asking about the kids. Dad said in slang that it was fair enough for the midlines, indicating that the kids were upset, but within what he considered normal for their age. I asked if I could speak with them if they were up, and he handed me the cell phone. I spent the next hour talking to all 3 kids before returning the phone to Grandpa. According to what Lena managed to explain, Leonard mentioned that my father drowned as an alligator dragged him away. They found his undressed body with several dead animals in the refrigerator. While his body wasn't bitten, it had a few scratches, so he recommended a closed casket. I thanked Dad solemnly and informed him that I would be home Saturday morning to handle the funeral arrangements. I mentioned that I needed to call my wife and check on her. He remarked that it sounded good, stating that at times like this, one has to keep up appearances. Before saying goodbye, I called Lena, and reports indicated she was in serious condition. Conversing with her was challenging as she couldn't stop crying. She couldn't fathom how they hadn't spotted an alligator before, given their weekly horseback rides. I questioned if it was typical for them to swim undressed, and Lena couldn't bear it, dropping the call. Now she knew I was aware of the truth. The following morning, during a business meeting, the same 2 detectives from the previous night called me in. After my wife fainted while grieving and tried to drown her sorrows, a gas explosion occurred, flurry out part of the house. She didn't escape in time and was fatally crushed by debris. I requested to expedite the process due to my need to fly out urgently. Fortunately, they understood, and I secured a better deal than anticipated. I managed to catch the last plane to the Cape that evening. Stepping off the 12-seater plane, I found my father-in-law waiting. Dad said that my wife and he were counting on me and the grandchildren to stay with them until things were settled. This would give me time to get things organized and settled. I inquired about how Mom was handling it, and Dad revealed that she struggled, until the police informed them this afternoon that she was your father's longtime mistress. Their suspicions were confirmed when they discovered blackmail notes Lena had been receiving in your father's office. I remarked that it must have bothered them. Dad added that it was a bracelet with 16 different erotic charms, all undressed, suggesting it could be seen as a model of what lovers did in those days. Of course, they planned to talk to me after the funeral. I asked how I should arrange to meet them, and Dad suggested a simple plan. I should take the prenup and the private investigator's report with me and give them to them right away. It would prove that I had no motive to frame them. I smiled, knowing he said it to remind me that all passaways, until proven one way or another, would be treated as suspicious. The more candid I was about them, the less chance they would consider it a homicide. Dad and I went to the funeral home office together to select a casket. We settled on a closed casket for both of them. I then contacted Terry at the office, informing him that the contracts were signed, and I would be taking a few days off. There was a considerable turnout at the funeral and tea party for the lovebirds. Considering everything, I believe my kids handled it well. I maintained my composure as much as possible, though there were moments when I couldn't hide my emotions. Many speculated about a closer-than-usual relationship between the two, but nothing was publicly mentioned about it. The detectives patiently waited while the fire inspectors finalized a report on the gas explosion at my house. They determined the cause to be a faulty installation conducted while I was away. Upon receiving the report, I could legally sue the gas company for negligent passaway and loss of home. They found no evidence to determine when the alligator was placed in the pond. Presenting the prenuptial agreement and the private investigator's report, I gave them a copy using my father-in-law's printer. They appreciated my disclosure, resolving any potential issues that might arise upon others reviewing their final report. While sitting on the back patio with Lena's father and enjoying cold beer, he mentioned that he and his wife planned to change their will, leaving everything to the kids in a living trust controlled by me until they reach the age of 30. I responded that it doesn't matter if he had anything to do with what happened, stating that karma has given them what they deserve and we should leave it at that. Leonard smiled and complimented me, saying that he always knew I was a smart man who knew what to say when it was needed. At Macy's, where the kids and I were making significant purchases, Fiona ran into me. We had moved into my dad's house during the remodel of mine, which was stale and desperately needed repair. I explained to Fiona that we were buying things because we had nothing left and introduced her to my 3 children, Luna, Leon, and Levi. We decided to start with the boys, figuring out their preferences and dislikes, gathering enough underwear, t-shirts, blue jeans, shirts, jackets, and other clothes to last 2 weeks. After paying for our selections, I made 6 trips to the car, utterly exhausted by the end, including the last trip involving new shoes. The children suggested that Fiona should come with us to our temporary home, and then she could return with me to help pick out a new closet. Fiona hesitated, expressing that she didn't want me to think she's meddling in things that don't concern her. Luna firmly stated that she thought I should go with Fiona and then take her out to dinner to show how much we appreciate her help. That's precisely what we did. After dropping the kids off and unloading everything, Fiona and I returned, working for a total of 4 hours. I invited her for dinner, and she mentioned that she had called Luna to get her agreement and made arrangements on her cell phone to have their favorite pizza delivered. When I got home, the big question surfaced. Daddy, are you going to ask her out on a real date? And that remains a question yet to be answered.